What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And today I'm going to talk about what got me a 10-year sentence in prison. I was convicted of attempted murder in 1996, and I was sentenced to 10 years. But I thought I'd give you guys a little bit of the background and kind of what happened and what led to me actually going to the county jail and taking that deal for 10 years. So we had a homeboy named Casey, and he lived on a street that was this happened in Concord. He lived in a street off of Clayton Road that was only policed by the sheriffs. It was a county road, and his family was middle class. They had taken in my brother Chino for some time and looked after him, prior, and so they had a relationship. And Casey was a homeboy, right? And we used to go to his house to party and kick it, in part because of the lack of police attention. It was like a little court, but also, his parents let us go by there, and it was out of the way. You didn't have to worry about rivals or anything else. So it was a peaceful place, and we'd hang out front, right? We didn't go inside. We'd kick it out front and have a good time. And so this was going on one night, and my brother and I were over there. There was a couple other people over there. There were some girls over there, and we got a page, right? And so Chino and I left. We left in my little Cutlass Sierra, right? And went and did something, and then started getting 911 pages from Casey. And we're like, man, what's going on? So we get at him, we call him. He's like, man, you got to get over here, this and that. And essentially what had happened was a car had pulled up with some females that were invited, but they had brought this dude with them. That dude's name was Brian, right? Brian Duarte out of Pittsburgh. So they had brought him, and he was unknown to us, to the group, to Casey. And while he was there hanging out, I believe he had just gotten out of YA. But he was with the business, right? So he had gotten out of the car. He was kicking in front, having some beers, and he started throwing beer cans in the bushes and just kind of littering, which we didn't do there, right? We respected that space. So Casey gets at him and is like, hey, man, you got to pick up after yourself, right? And Brian buffs him. Brian's like, what you going to do about it? And Casey's, uncertain. He's not sure how it's going to go. He's scared, flat out. So he goes inside his house, and he had just obtained a revolver, right? A 22 revolver. And that actually came from Chino, right? If I remember right. And so he, my brother, so he comes outside with the revolver and is loading it. Now, mind you, we're not there at the time. This is just when we got filled in on the story. So he comes out and he's loading the gun. And I guess his thing was to intimidate that guy, to intimidate Brian so that Brian would back up. Didn't work. I think Brian could sense in his eyes that dude wasn't gonna shoot nothing. He wasn't gonna let nothing die. And so he still punked him, right? What are you gonna do with that? Blah, blah, blah. And also it's kind of common sense that probably a dude's not gonna shoot you in front of his little middle-class house. So Casey's like, you guys should just go, party's over, this and that. And he puckers up, right? And the thing is, Casey could fight pretty good, right? And he was down to fight. But for whatever reason, he wasn't down to fight this guy. And so yeah, they leave, and that's that. And we had told Casey afterwards, like, man, you're a fool. You don't ever pull a gun on somebody unless you're prepared to use it, right? Like, what's up with this dude? And then trying to figure out who he is. And we found out who he was and who he hung out with. Mind you, I'd never met him. I didn't see him at the house. He came while my brother and I are gone. So neither one of us had seen him and just really had a name. So we spent some time, my brother and I, because then word on the street is Brian's talking shit, right? Brian said, oh yeah, man, F these dudes, FKC, who went by the name Spooky, F Rascal, F Chino, F all they homeboys, F this. And we were like, wait a minute, what? We weren't there. Like, that would have went different if we were there. You know what I mean? So you putting the wrong names in your mouth now. And so there was an effort to kind of pull him out of hiding, right? Because we didn't see him anywhere. And getting at his folks and whatnot. And he just never popped up. We couldn't find him. And so kind of had let it go, right? To be honest. Fast forward some period of time, I think it was a few weeks, a month, I'm not exactly sure. And Chino and I live together, so we're kicking it at our apartments in Vista del Lago. And the girls tell us, right? So there was 3 girls that used to always hang out with each other, and they would hang out with us. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. But they were like, oh, there's a party. There's a party in the West, right? There's a party in Bay Point, West Pittsburgh. And we should go. And my brother and I were like, man, we don't want to go. You know, I'm cool. There's a bunch of strange people. If I remember right, it was like some dude who had put up flyers at all the hot spots around, you know, that part of Coco County. And because he was having a kegger and this and that. And I don't know, the dude didn't have any friends or something. And so he just invited people. But as you could imagine, that's a recipe for disaster. You know what I mean? If folks actually show up. My brother and I were like, nah, bro, it's cool. And we weren't really too big on parties anyways. You know, parties at our place, yeah. But going to other places, not very often. But we get talked into it, right? So Casey comes. Casey used to use his mom's van. So Casey comes with his mom's van. I got my little Cutlass, right? And I got the 3 girls in my car, along with Crazy Kenny, rest in peace. He just died recently. Went to his funeral. But Crazy Kenny was back there. I could do a whole profile on Crazy Kenny, right? And so we go. We drive from Concord, from Monument area out to the west. And when we get there, man, there's a gang of people. And it's in one of those little, like, new housing developments that they were building as they try to gentrify the area. And there's a ton of people. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people. And we're like, wow, you know, and they're out on the street, they're in the houses. So we pull up and we see a carload of people that we knew that were there. And they're like, man, this is whack. Like, they're out of beer. They're charging $5 to get in, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm not paying to go inside a party with people. You know what I mean? I've never done that a day in my life. And my brother was on the same page, right? Like, we ain't doing that shit. And then we see another carload of people that we know, right? And these are all Norteños, right? These are all homeboys from different little crews, you know, different little cliques, but we all got along. So now we have kind of a caravan, right? Of like 4 cars. You know, it's my car, it's the van, and then I don't really want to describe the other cars, but a couple other cars. So we go cruising by the party house, and the girls went to school with Brian. They know him, right? And they're like, hey, that's that dude Brian that you guys been looking for. And I'm like, where? And they're like, him right there. And he was talking to his lady by the car, but like right in front of the party house. And I was like, oh, snap. So I jump out the car and just double park. And I'm wearing a red Niners jersey and khaki and like some old red Pumas. And I mean, I'm flamed up, right? So I go back to the van that's right behind me that Casey's driving. My brother's in that vehicle. And I'm like, hey, fool, there goes that dude right now. Handle your business, right? And we had the 22 revolver. So it's like, hey, here. He's like, man, I'll go whoop his ass. You know, you can't go whoop his ass. You put a gun on him, bro. And he punked you. No, I ain't really with all that, you know? And my brother and I are looking at him like, what the fuck? And so I'm like, all right, bro, forget about it. I'll shoot him, you know? And so we say, hey, let's pull around the block. Just make sure there's not like cops posted off in the cuts waiting to hit this house, because it's unusual to have a house party with that many people and no police. So we drive around the block, no cops at all. And so we're like, fuck it, let's get active. And so I see the dude, I shoot at him. I was aiming for his mouth. I used that same 22 revolver. I'm kind of a symbolic person when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so I figured he punked somebody with that pistol, but now this pistol was going to get him. And I was aiming for his mouth because he was talking shit, right? Again, kind of symbolic. And I missed, but I got right below his chin, boom, into his neck. And that, 22 bullets bounce around. He drops, right? But when I shoot and I see him, I dip. And the cars dip with me. Now, not every car in our caravan knew that was going to happen, right? And so we pull off, but I'm lost. I don't know how to get out of this little housing development area. So I pull off to the side. Brody pulls up next to me. He's like, bro, you got that dude. Like, you got him. And I was like, all right, cool. How the fuck do I get out of here? And he's like, follow us, follow us. So I followed them and left. And from there, we actually went to another party over on Solano side. And when we pulled up there, we got word that this fool Catfish was in there. Now, I've been had a beef with Catfish. My brother had knocked his two front teeth out. But we had our own reasons for having an issue with him, right? And was in kind of in a mood at that point. So I was like, fuck, let's go shoot him, you know? And we go up to the door, but the guy whose house it was, he had a chop. You know what I mean? Like he had a rifle. And he's like, bro, I can't let you guys do that. Because even just in the time it took to like smoke a cigarette and start walking up there, the chatter was already going. And so people had already gone over there like, hey, bro, they finna whack Catfish. And so he came out with a chop and he was like, look, bro, I can't let that happen in my house. I mean, people come to my house, they're safe, bro. I know what y'all up to. It's all good, but I can't let you guys, come in here and shoot him. So we're like, okay, fine, right? Respected the homeboy. And we left. Me and my brother went home, right? Casey went home. And that's kind of all there was to it. We sat up, we drank some 40s. I think we had a Nintendo or something or Sega or whatever. So we kind of fooled around on the video game and went to sleep. Casey apparently had a much rougher night because at the crack of dawn in the morning, he's calling the house phone. Bro, did you guys sleep last night? And we were like, yeah, it's like we're not tweakers. Yeah. I didn't. Man, my stomach's upset. I can't even eat this and that. I remember my brother looking at each other like, bro, this is not good, right? And then older brother Kevin, who goes by the name Trigger, he comes out and he's like, you motherfuckers are stupid. You know that dude's going to tell you're going to prison, right? And we're like, whatever. And then we're talking about, man, we might go to jail, you know what I mean? And it wasn't a big deal. Like there was no stress involved. We weren't naive, but we were kids, bro. I was 19 years old, and life wasn't serious, and violence wasn't serious. Going to jail wasn't serious. You took it on the chin. You took it as it comes. And so we were telling Casey, and Casey starts talking on the phone about stuff. My brother's like, bro, shut the fuck up. Like, slide through and we'll talk. And he comes by and we talked, and he was just emotionally distraught. We're like, whatever, but he's going to hold his mud. He ain't going to tell. Well, Casey gets arrested. Casey winds up getting arrested for it by Pittsburgh PD, I guess, and charged with attempted murder. And apparently he started telling before he even got to the police station, right? And but I didn't know that. Nobody knew that. And again, like my brother had a close relationship with his parents, and Casey was cool, but he ain't built for prison. He ain't built for jail. And my thought was his life is better than us. Like he has options. He comes from a middle-class family that loves him and has resources. Like he could really do something with his life. I'm just a little ghetto bastard. Fuck, I'm gonna do with my life. Like I'm destined for prison anyways. Might as well get the shit over with and go see what's up. And I didn't want somebody to do time for something I did. I was already dealing with a situation in which somebody else and myself did something. That person got caught and was insistent about me not getting involved. And they're like, look, bro, I'm gonna ride it out. I'm gonna go to trial. And that dude was in the county when I wound up going to the county, right? And so I was like, I don't want somebody to do time for me. I already have this situation that I feel guilty about, even though he ain't tripping. And again, Casey ain't built for this. I did not know he was telling. No idea, right? Knew he was weak in the stomach, but didn't know that he was telling. So, but his family knew, right? And so like, hey, the detectives want to talk to you. And so, can you want to go to the police station? I don't even remember what police station, to be honest. I think it was in Pittsburgh, but so my brother and I go, right? They give us a ride to the police station, and I'm just going to tell them Casey ain't done it, right? And see kind of what questions they had. So we went. I remember we got fast food, and now looking back, I think his family was like, it's going to be his last meal for a while. Let's look out for him. And I go over there, And I walk inside. The detective is expecting me. We go sit down in a little room, not like the rooms you see on TV, not like the room where old girl snitched on Jace, which is a whole playlist in my playlist. It's free Jace Mathis. But it wasn't like that, right? But it was like a cubby more. And it was just us. I believe it was on a weekend, if I remember right. And he's like, man, what happened? I was like, I don't know. He goes, you weren't at the party? I was like, nah, I don't know what happened. He goes, how about I let you know what I think happened? I was like, sure. This dude knew everything. He knew who was sitting in my car and what positions they were sitting in. And the cops had gone to the local high schools and interrogated the girls. None of the girls flipped. They gave various stories, but none of them flipped, right? And more on that in a second. So, but he knew everything, every single thing. And so I was like, he got me, right? And he's like, so what you want to do? I was like, man, that's interesting. I ain't never heard that before. And he's like, all right, well, you came in here on your own free will, man. You're free to go. If you ain't got nothing to say, you did it, and I'm gonna get you. But if you ain't got nothing to say, then see ya. And so I walked outside and I smoked a cigarette and I talked to my brother. And I was like, bro, they know everything. And I might as well just ride this out. Right. And so I smoked a cigarette, maybe two back to back, and hugged my brother and went and knocked on the door. The cop came to the door and I was like, look, man, it's on me. And he pulled me inside. He goes, all right, what happened? And I said, well, I pulled up and shot him. I didn't like the dude. And so I shot him. And he's like, who else was in your car? I said, look, man, you got me. I'm the only shooter. Only one gun was used. Only one bullet was even fired. That's me. And so the rest of whatever else questions you have is irrelevant. You're looking for who shot him. I shot him, period. Man, he's like, okay. And at that point I was like, man, can I smoke another cigarette? And he's like, no, sorry. Takes me down to the county jail. And when I get to the county jail, I'm in the holding tank and I'm there for a long time. And like over 24 hours. And I'm tripping on why I'm there because I'm watching people come in and then they go get a bunk, right? And I'm wondering how come I'm not getting a bed. And I found out later it's because Casey was in Q module, which is the intake module, and they had to process him out and away from me before they could put me over there. And I guess that took some time. And so, because I came into the section and I'll do a spiel on my time in county jail, man, it was wild and rough. And so somebody had told me, oh yeah, man, that dude Casey was just here. And so that was that. And yeah, apparently Casey tried to commit suicide a couple of times while I was in prison. He really got messed up with alcohol and poor relationships. And then he found Jesus and his sister's married to a pastor, so who was a homeboy back then. But one of the interesting things in my paperwork was, and I was charged with tons of stuff, right? Like I was facing a life sentence off top, but it's like reckless discharge of a firearm and county limits and city limits. They had me for inciting a riot because apparently after dude was shot and we left, folks started squabbing and the ambulance had to park down like off of Willow Pass and wait for the police to secure the scene before they can go up there. So they said I incited a riot, all sorts of things. And in looking at the paperwork, Casey was the only thing that connected me to that case. There was over 200 witnesses. Not a single person described me, right? Not a single person said my name. Not a single person described even my brother, right? And my brother, like I said, it was one shot fired, one gun. That was me. My brother didn't shoot, but nobody described us. The description of the vehicle, nobody described my vehicle. They described the van behind me. They described the Impala behind that. They described the truck behind that. And I think it's because when folks heard the shot, they ducked. And when they looked back up, they seen a car speeding off, and it kind of depends on how long they ducked for what car they saw speeding. But they didn't have my car. Um, they had went and got us some of my homeboys, and they held their mud. Right? It was like, nah, this and that, this and that. Like I said, the girls held their mud. Everybody held their mud. The victim initially said that it was Casey. He picked Casey out of a lineup. Casey and I look nothing alike. Initially, he picked Casey out of a lineup. And then all of a sudden, he picks me out of a lineup after Casey's arrested. So clearly the cops got at him and was like, hey, fool, Casey didn't do it. You know, Rascal did. And this is him in the picture. And he picked me out. But, you know, so he had something to say. But I mean, he's shot, you know, in the neck. So it's a little bit hard to hold that against him. You know what I mean? It's still cooperating. That's not what you're supposed to do. I've been stabbed and everything else, and I never told the police who did it or what happened. But I kind of get his. Everybody else was quiet. The only person that told was Casey. And had he not told, who knows how this would have gone, you know? But in reality, I did it. And you know, there's consequences for shooting people when the police get involved. But some of the lessons, so to speak, that I think is in this. For one, you never know who you're dealing with, right? And that's in the streets, that's in business, that's anywhere. You never fully know who you're talking to. Casey thought he could just punk this dude. He had another thing coming, right? There's always somebody bigger and badder than you out there. There's always somebody that's willing to go a step further than you are. And so you got to be careful. Right? You got to be careful in how you work with people. And as I say, don't let your mouth write a check that your ass can't cash. Right? Similarly, the same thing happened with Brian. You know, you got beef with one person, but you start just throwing out names because all of a sudden now you feel invincible. Right? Like, well, I got the best of him. They all must be just like him. No, we're not all just like him. Right? And he paid a price for that. You know what I mean? He got shot in the neck. He's paralyzed now, and he's mobbing around Pittsburgh in a wheelchair. And so he don't, you know, he ain't caught up in no hood shit. Apparently, he's gone on to live a pretty good life, and I'm happy for that. I feel bad for shooting him now because I feel bad for committing acts of violence on anybody, with the exception of if it's an immediate danger to my family. But at the time, it fit with the lifestyle. At the time, what I did was normal. And as teenagers, we tend to do stuff without fully realizing the consequences. Like, I knew I could go to prison. I knew this, I knew that, but I didn't really know it because I hadn't been there. You know, I'd done juvenile time. I've done this. I've seen the movies, but none of that actually prepared me for being in a cell. Thankfully, all the juvenile time made it to where I really wasn't upset with going to prison. Like, I never cried myself to sleep at night, but my life could have been better. My life could have been different. Brian's life could have been better and different, right? It didn't have to go that far. And so that's on me, right? And I own that, and I take responsibility for that. And so that also runs in my mind. There's some guilt, you know. There's some concern, like, you know, bad karma type stuff, you know. This was only a year after my brother Roy had been murdered, less than a year after he had been murdered. And so I think that has something to do with my mindset. But I pushed a legacy for Roy and I both. And I know damn sure he wouldn't have wanted me out there shooting people, you know, and he wouldn't have wanted me in prison. And there was a lot of other consequences to that in terms of relationships, in terms of things that happen to other people that I'm not going to get into now. It's going to make this longer than it needs to be. But yeah, that's how I went to prison, man. That's what I went to prison for. It's my only prison term, and I'm thankful for that. I paroled from the Pelican Bay Shoot Program in 2005. I did my time the right way from the beginning to the end. But when I came home, I said, I'm done. I ain't with all that no more. I'm gonna try something different. And thank God I did, because again, 16 years later, 3 kids later, careers later, I'm still here. help others move with excellence, man. And that's what homies do, and help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. There's going to be some content coming up, and I'm going to try to go live shortly after this video premieres. So if you're around, tap in. Take care.